Well, a very warm welcome to everyone present here today. We are honored to have a distinguished lineup of panelists from across the globe and various time zones. So, good morning, good afternoon, and a very good evening to some. I'm Apurva Arya, the founder and CEO of Circular Innovation Lab, a circular economy think tank based in Copenhagen. We work with national governments and UN agencies in supporting a global transition to a circular economy. Recently, we published a global benchmarking study with the United Nations Development Programme that looks into how policy and especially legislation can enable this transition. And today's event will discuss the role of policy in enabling the circular economy transition in emerging economies. This event is jointly organized with Chatham House, one of the leading policy institutes in the world. And before we begin with session one, I would like to mention two key points. The audience can send their questions in the Q&A box on their screens, and these questions will be picked by the moderator if time allows. And secondly, the entire event is being recorded. So without further ado, it gives me immense pleasure to introduce the moderator for session one and session two, Mr. Patrick Schroeder, Senior Research Fellow at Chatham House, who leads the circular economy work there. Over to you, Patrick. Thank you.
Yes, great. Thank you, Apurva. Thank you very much for the introduction, and we're very excited to be co-hosting this event with you. At Chatham House, we've been looking at the circular economy in the international context for about 10 years already as a topic. And about 3 years ago, we started in a more systematic way to track what's happening in different countries in terms of policy developments. And we've noticed that it's actually now becoming really difficult to keep up to date. With our policy tracker, we have looked at about 500 policies around the world that are being implemented, and there are many, many more which are in the making. And so today we're going to get a really interesting overview of the latest developments. So in the sessions today, what we're going to hear is the challenges and opportunities that countries, emerging economies in particular, are facing with the circular economy. Then also we will understand a little bit more the interaction between policies and business development, but also the role of the interaction between informal sector working in circular economy and the policies, and also hear more about generally the awareness and the opportunities for cooperation between countries. And maybe the final thing is the World Circular Economy Forum taking place in Kigali this year is also a great opportunity to showcase all the good things that are happening in African countries. And Africa was the first continent that we looked at with our mapping. And so in our first session, this is what we're going to focus on. And we have a lineup of really interesting countries and speakers to present their latest developments. And we'll just go straight into it. So our first speaker today is Mr.Ablaye Diao from the Direction de l'Environnement et des Établissements Classés from the government of Senegal. And so in Senegal, we know there's a growing national ambition to make the Senegalese economy more circular. And there's a number of plans in development, the Plan Senegal Emerging, as well as a priority action plan for the time 2019 to 2023. Could you tell us some more information about this? What's happening?
All right, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I want to thank you, so much, very much for inviting me to speak in this at this important panel. As you already introduced it, I want to focus my speech on the policy framework going on in my country, and then how the legislation in Senegal take into account the circular economy. And at least I will show, share with you a little bit the challenges we face on making, effective the circular economy work in our country and the opportunity. In 2014, the government adopted the development plan, as you mentioned before, the Emerging Senegal plan. And in that plan, it recognizes that the green economy is a mean to meet basic social need in sustainable development. It is a very important point to show the political engagement. And we come over 2019 to stress on it by supplementing that plan by a national policy on the circular economy called the Green Emerging Senegal Plan. And then we add on that plan a presidential directive called the Zero Waste Presidential Directive. And all those plans aim to rethink our production and the waste management in the country, and trying to build it around a true circular economy. And those plans also show the real engagement in the political level, in the management, in the top management level, to introduce or to implement the circular economy in the country. But according to the legislation, we have a bunch of legal instruments that have been established in the country and are very relevant, regarding the model of the circular economy. And these instruments, target areas such as the environment area, the resource preservation area, the sanitation area, and then health and safety, etc. And all these legally binding framework lay down the principles of environmentally sound management of waste and then discharges. And I want to focus a little bit on the environmental area. We developed legislation such as the environmental code. That code was established by in 2001. And if we look at deeper in that code, we have title relating to the prevention and fight against the pollution and nuisances. And in that part of the code, it deals, among other things, with the classified installation for environmental protection, which we use to control the industry in the country, and it target also on waste management, how we can plan the waste management in order to make sure that everything goes smoothly, and then the harmful also and dangerous chemical substances, because this code that code helped to put in place a scientific mechanism to technical also to try to deal with how we can manage all the importation, exportation, the transportation also of chemical substances. And we have also the environmental impact assessments system, which is a system that could help to take into account the circular economy. And all these aspects show really the legally based on and the institutional involvement of promoting the circular economy in national level. Well, if I come to the plastic law, we go through different steps to put in place our plastic law, and in May 2015, the government adopted a first law relating to the prohibition of the production and the importation of the low micron plastic bags. And it defines the low micron plastic bags as those bags made by plastic materials and then having a thickness equal or less than 30 microns. And after that law entered into force, we face a lot of difficulties, to implement it effectively, because it only targeted the low micron plastic bag. That's the first point. And the other thing is, as agents to having the role to implement the law enforcement activity, we didn't have the technological devices that help us clearly identify those plastic targeted by the law. And then it was a very tough time trying to implement that law. And then in January 2020, a new plastic law was adopted to repeal and replace the 2015 plastic law. And in this new plastic law, what is very interesting is it appeared clearly that the law aimed the transition from a linear economy to a circular economy. And this was the first time that the circular economy is, shown in the legislation framework in Senegal. And for example, if I go through that law, we had, key aspect on the plastic law, which include innovative provision. And those provision is like, first of all, the 2020 plastic law bans single use of disposable plastic. And those plastic were listed like being the cups, them straws, all those plates, knife, forks, all those cutlery made from, made by plastic materials, and which are, just to use one time and throw away. And it prohibits to the checkouts plastic bags. All those materials, though, dealing with single-use plastic product, and then the checkouts plastic bag were banned or prohibited in the country, like being produced, not being now produced or imported in the country. And in the other step, the plastic law introduced a plastic bottle deposit system, which which is intended to be, or may be, a way to improve the collection rate and treatment of the resulting waste coming from the use already plastic bottles. And in the other side, it sets targets also for integrating recycled plastic into new product made or manufactured from plastic materials. And those dispositions, apply to industries actually implement, like manufacturing in the country, plastic materials for use in household and other issues. And last but not least, the 2020 plastic law introduces an extended producer responsibility regime, which obliges producers to take responsibility for the product they place into the market when those products become waste. Those points I already said that a very innovative provision that was firstly introduced by the plastic law, the 2020 plastic law in the country. Well, in implementing that plastic law, we have undertaken some activities, and the most important ones were the inspection operation we organized in order to capture prohibited plastic product available in different markets all over the country. And in 1 year, we have organized around 180 seizures operation all over the country, and we captured like around 70 tons of plastic product, or of banned or prohibited plastic product, which was already in the market. We organized also communication activities and stakeholder training. For example, the training of custom officers on the application of the plastic law, because in the plastic law that was banned the importation of some plastic products. So we needed to train the custom officers who are in charge of to control all those importation activities, then to better apply the plastic law in the country. So coming to the gaps and opportunities, in experiencing the plastic law, the implementation of the plastic law, we found out some gap and opportunity, and those gap and opportunity may fit into potential niches of collaboration with the government in the waste management sector. And I can mention, first of all, the need to make the policy framework more effective. Because we in the plastic law, we identify some additional texts that have to be developed and implemented, and those additional texts target the need to effectively run the EPR regime. I explain myself that in the EPR regime, the plastic law called the industry that produce plastic product to come together and to put in place the eco-organism based on their financial support, and then the eco-organism should be now established based on specification we have to establish before, and the establishment of those specifications relate to either the government and also the private sector. And in that point, those points relating to the EPR regime, we need to put in place are not done yet. And we have in the other side the need to address the integration of recycled plastic into the new product the existing plant actually in Senegal produce. And that one we find out that we need some, technical guideline or technical study to show what should be the level of integration of those recycled plastic into new product. And also, it is a very, very important and point that we need to address right now to make more effective the implementation of the plastic law. And last but not least is the need to channel investment into waste infrastructure. In Senegal, there is a lack of industrial infrastructure that addresses the treatment of waste in some level, and especially in hazardous waste. And that need is clearly identified in national level, and that's why we are talking about the channeling of investment into those waste infrastructure, because only we have the some plastic industry existing, and then we have some more other waste that exist in national level and need to be addressed by promoting the industrial development and in some level. Yes. There are some points I would like to mention and to share with you. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Diao. I think, yeah, that's a really good note to end on. Also the link between how policy can facilitate investments into these sectors. I thought also the point that you made about the different steps on how to tackle plastics, it comes in different stages. The extended producer responsibility that you working on, I think is very important. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. And then, Mr. Diao, you're able to type answers if questions come. And let's now move to our next speaker, Mr. Tanyaradzwa Mundoga, who's the Deputy Director, National Resources Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Ministry of Environment, Climate, Tourism, Hospitality Industry from Zimbabwe. Great, thanks, welcome, thanks for joining us. Can you, we know Zimbabwe has several public policies and private sector initiatives to support circular economy. Can you explain a little bit the challenges that you meet when coordinating between public and private in the design of these policies?
Thank you, Patrick, and allow me to thank you for having me on this very important discussion. I will not spend much time, but just to give you a quick overview of the current policy environment that we have in the country. The issue of environment is a serious issue, which is provided for under our constitution in the country. And this is obviously supported by quite a robust set of legislation and policies. But unfortunately, we are not yet there in terms of circular economy. What we have are fragmented provisions which are trying to address the issue specifically of pollution control, waste management, and the issue of plastics, which obviously is a menace in the country. And the difficult thing for us, Patrick, is how do, in fact, we can't separate the response from the private sector from the current economic challenges that the country is facing. So we have got an industry and then manufacturing sector, a private sector, which is obviously suffering from low capacity utilization, challenges in terms of getting capital and financing for the work that they do on a daily basis. And to them, the issue of trying to address issues around circular economy is almost like an additional cost. And I think it is an issue of the kind of narrative that we have been putting across as well from our side as government, because mostly we've been profiling this issue as an environmental issue and not an issue which is supposed to be looked at from a national point of view. So I think that's how we should are going to be moving forward now, to have kind of a national dialogue that at least we are on the same page. And I think work is already underway. We had a success, previous success, when we banned the use of styrofoam. You know, we used to have it as a part of packaging for food, but that kind of thing, we use styrofoam material, we stopped it, we banned it, and we're happy that it was well received by our private players and industry, and you will not find it anywhere except for manufacturing, packaging, or shipping or transportation uses. So the same definitely we're going to try to use for one of the most problematic areas, which is single-use plastic. Like what my the earlier speaker colleague, Mr. Diao, has indicated that single-use plastic is a menace even in our country, in Zimbabwe. We are trying to make sure that we eventually ban single-use plastics. It's going to be a first approach. It's going to be a process. It's not going to be an event, but definitely we have got to do that. So some of the challenges that we also have is the issue of public shift in attitude. The issue of attitude is a critical one. How do we change attitudes, especially of our citizens, the majority of our citizens? I know we'll be able maybe to do that with our private players through engagement. We are able to talk to them. They might be able to understand, but when it comes to the majority of the citizens, it has to be a process, a well-calculated process that takes a bit of time. And how do we get buy-in from all the other sectors of the economy? How do you make sure that the politician is aware of this, and how do you make sure that the business person, the youth, the women, even school children as well, we need to catch them young, so that at least this whole concept of circular economy is inculcated at a tender age and at an early age. And it's something that we are trying to do. Unfortunately, like I told you, we have got the kind of policy, the legislation that is available. It does not speak specifically to circular economy, but of course, it's got those facets that are important for us to be achieving the circular economy that we want. So the opportunity that is available is you appreciate that slowly Zimbabwe has got a rising informal sector of recyclers, waste pickers. So what we have tried to do now is to say, let's strengthen these informal players, the activities, let's say support them, let's make sure that they are supported in every way, be it policy-wise, incentives, so that at least it becomes a lucrative business venture for us, for you to do recycling. And once we do that, I know we'll be able to kickstart an industry which will be able to absorb a lot of the waste that we are producing. But that will not be enough if we don't address the supply side of most of the waste that we have. And how to address this is to ensure that we engage our industries for them to be able to produce better products, products that have got a longer lifespan, products that last long, and I think divert from the fast kind of business model where you produce products that are only meant for a very short period of time and they are easily thrown away, especially for the everyday consumer goods. So we're trying to look at recyclable products. If you are able to remove plastic bottling from your water and use glass, which is recyclable, how do you do that? And also the issue of trying to reduce even the amount of water usage, go beyond the issue of, in fact, the issue of green energy as well. So it's a whole mix of issues and activities that we are trying to put up, but it's not easy, Patrick. It's a process that we have got to continuously inculcate in our stakeholders, in our citizens. I hope we'll be able to achieve what we want in the near future. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mundoga. Yes, I think the point that you mentioned, it's a whole mix of issues, they're very interconnected. So, and many of the issues you mentioned relevant in other countries. I thought the point that you made about addressing circularity is for many businesses a short-term additional cost, and that's the role of government to provide incentives. And I think you, as you mentioned, you're doing this with the informal sector. Be really interesting to see how this works out. Great, thank you again. So if you have any questions for Mr. Mundoga, please put them in the chat. And I think what we might do now, we quickly jump over to Mr. Hayden Romano from Trinidad and Tobago, because Mr. Romano, you need to leave a little bit earlier. If you could just give us a very brief introduction about the circular economy policy landscape in your country.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you to Chatham House and Circular Innovation Lab for inviting me. So Trinidad and Tobago, I think we're in early times with respect to the circular economy. What we do have is that we do have a national environmental policy, which was revised in 2018, and it speaks to evolving a green economy as one of the priority areas. Now, our national environmental policy has 6 priority areas, 24 thematic areas, and 252 policy statements. One of the policy statements in the evolving a greener economy is to encourage the growth and development of a circular economy in which waste is revalued and resources are recirculated locally as much as possible. And therefore, I mean, we think it's really important for culture change to be driven by policy. And the national environmental policy is aligned to our government's Vision 2030 policy, which one of the objectives is placing the environment at the center of social and economic development. It's also aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we are in the process of revising other policies, including our integrated waste management policy. We have recently, and when I say recently, only in May, have enacted and is in operation our waste rules, which deal with handlers and producers of waste. So I think we are in the process, very early in the process of moving towards a circular economy. Of course, one of the major challenges will be the culture change, because you're moving from a society that accustomed with a linear approach in terms of use of resources to a circular approach. And therefore, education will also need to accompany a legislation. So I think I'll stop there, Patrick.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Romano. And yeah, I was interested to, so what you're saying about the Vision 2030, that you're linking the circular economy policies to that and the Sustainable Development Goals. I think that's very, very good. And also something that we've been trying to do in our research to show how a circular economy can contribute to the SDGs. There's a lot of synergies and potentials there. Great, okay. Again, if you have questions to Mr. Roma, please put them in the chat. And then now we switching back to our next speaker. There's Mr. Mukwena. So Mr. Mukwena is Chief Director for Chemicals and Waste Policy, Monitoring and Evaluation, Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment in the government of South Africa. And so we just in 2019, South Africa has finalized a range of circular economy guidelines. And could you maybe tell us a little bit more about this working document and the impact it's had since it was published?
Thank you very much, Program Director, and thanks a lot for the opportunity to Chatham House, as well as the ladies and gentlemen in the call. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I'm really honored to be part of this panel. It's history that South Africa is known to be having one of the world-class constitution, which has been developed through a consultative, as they call it, participatory approach. Hence, based on that, we have one of the key principles in the Constitution, Chapter 2 on the Bill of Rights, which largely talks to environment specifically. And we're basing our environmental legislation from that enabling provision in the Constitution, hence the National Environmental Management Act, which is a framework legislation for us in the country. But there are specific environmental management acts, in particular here, Thinking Waste Management Act, which enables us to deal with circular economy, waste diversion away from landfill, making use of practical examples and materials that is collected on day-to-day basis from households and other facilities. As a result, the guideline on circular economy was developed and in partnership with other strategic partners, largely from resource point of view, to ensure that we are able to transition to circular economy. I've mentioned the legislative part, but key to South Africa was the pieces of policy instruments, such as the Integrated Pollution and Waste Management Strategy of 2000, which was the first strategy that was talking to pollution, but also introducing a thinking and the notion of a change in mindset around pollution, which was seen as a challenge. Back then, we had what we called flowers, which was plastic material and other waste streams, which were not managed the way they are currently. 2011, we had the second iteration of the National Waste Management Strategy, which was talking to the issue of the waste hierarchy now, and saying there is the 3 R's, 4 R's, or 5 R's, depending on where you are, you can make something out of waste. Waste is wealth, waste is money, waste is a resource for us to do something about it through diverting it away from landfill and looking at other possibilities or ways in which waste can be utilized. The National Development Plan for South Africa 2030, it also gives us an idea and an indication of the benefits and the advantages of doing long-term planning for effective environmental management, as well as effective circular economy. Linked to it and based on the NWM, on
Oh, I think there's an issue with the connection. Let's wait a second whether we can Mr. Moderator back. No, it seems to be disconnected. Maybe in that case, maybe we could move to our next speaker. That's okay, Mr. Gemetru, if you're ready. Mr. Gemetru is the Director General, Environmental Compliance Monitoring and Control Directorate in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of Ethiopia. And maybe one question, if you be able to say something more about this. The circular economy in Ethiopia, the way that you've designed policies, as I understand, is a lot in consideration also of the informal sector. And we've heard this also from the previous speaker. If you could explain a little bit more how you're doing this from the design of the policies and then the implementation later.
Thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, colleagues. First, I would like to thank the organizers, Chatham, for the opportunity to speak on the experience and challenge in implementing national circular economy policies and legislation in Ethiopia. I'm also honored to be with all the speakers. So to start, I will get back to your question, Patrick, because I have it in my mind. So since the launch of Ethiopia's ambitious climate resilient green economy strategy in 2011, the government and private sectors involved have been taking so many measures to change the existing scenario, the path to growth and development. Updating and developing the legal framework and strengthening institutional capacity are among the key areas. I will talk a little bit later about major legal frameworks that we integrate circular economy. So for us, there are a lot of pressures and pushing factors to have the circular economy in our legislations as well as in our national development plan. One of the pushing factor is the economy. As you know, Africa and Ethiopia will, as well as Ethiopia, will be the second fastest.
It seems we have, again, a problem with the connection. Mr. Gemetru, can you hear us still? Maybe without video? Ah, yes. Okay. So maybe if you could turn off your video, then maybe the connection is better then.
Recording in progress.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Apologies for that.
Patrick, hello? Hello?
Hello. Oh, yes.
I'm back here. So these are the pushing factors for us to incorporate the circular economy in all our national implementation plan as well as the regulation. For the legal and institutional framework, EPA is currently it used to be the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Now it's the leading coordinating institute for the roadmap of and the legal framework over all circular economy. We do have also an institution called it Ethiopian Standards Agency. It's a technical wing to support all key stakeholders in training and other technical supports. So for us, industry, waste management, and agriculture are prioritized sectors which currently highly integrate our circular economy programs Hello?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Okay.
Yes, keep going.
So,
1 more minute.
yeah, we do have this environmental safeguarding legislation such as EIA, Pollution Control Proclamation, Chemical Registration, and others. So, but for us, currently, we come up with new legislation such as urban waste management, e-waste management, and industrial waste management, and guiding standards for this circular economy in general. So within this legal framework and institutional arrangement, we came up in the past 3 years with very encouraging results. For instance, the textile and garment sectors, we have reached about 55 of them in training the circular economy to incorporate in their plan. 20 of the laser industry. Even in the question you have mentioned, this small-scale enterprise are much engaged in the circular economy in their plan. So we have reached about 110 small-scale enterprise in the modular form to incorporate circular economy in their plan. So as I mentioned, industry, agriculture, and urban waste management is our key areas. We have also, so far, we have reached some results in implementing the circular economy in our major legislations. For instance, we reduce in industry, textile and leather, we reduce 20% of their waste by using the byproduct. In urban sector, we recycle 7 to 9% of the waste. In agriculture, we use the coffee husk and composting briquettes. Hello? Yeah.
Hello.
We use
Yes,
2% of the coffee husk for composting and briquette for energy. So with the recycling, for instance, in Ethiopia, we don't have glass and metal as a waste character. And we have reached 95% of the glass recycling, which is equivalent to what Europeans now reached it. When on metal, we have reached 85% of recycling. And on plastic, we do have also reached 40% processing, just crushing and changing it to another product. So these are the results that we have achieved so far. However, we do have challenges and we do have also lessons we learned throughout this process. One of the challenge in incorporating circular economy is we are working with very dismantling method of, we are working in a sectorial approach. So this is one of the challenges. So we are working to have a clear roadmap on specific sectors such as industry, agriculture, and waste to incorporate in the national plan. The other challenge that we have is there is a continuous increasing of waste, which 20% of the municipal budget is called for the waste management. So unless we don't implement this circular economy, both for the reduction and utilization of waste, the challenge will be continued. So we want to exert our force here also. The other challenge we have is technology, knowledge, and the finance for industries and waste sector is another challenge. We do have also lessons we have learned when practicing this incorporating circular economy in the national plan, as well as in industrials, private sectors plan. One of the lesson learned is this circular economy is more effective with the involvement of greater number of stakeholders. When the stakeholders are minimized, the results that we are gained from this will be decreased. So in our future plan, we want to engage more stakeholders in every sector. The other lessons that we want to share with other colleagues is this circular economy should be part of the national action plan. Unless we make this concept in every parts and parcels of the national development plan, we will not be successful. So that is why we are making the data, the informations should be incorporated in even in the National Statistics Agency. The other lessons that we have got from the process is the involvement of private sectors. The concept of circular economy, the practice of circular economy is more effective when the private sectors are more engaged. We are successful in industries and private waste management sectors because of the more private sectors, even entrepreneurs are more engaged. So these are the lessons that we learned while we are practicing the concept and some activities of circular economy.
Thank you. I think, yeah, I think that's a key lesson learned, actually, the involvement of stakeholders, so important. And I was also so glad to hear that you mentioned this, the sectoral approach, and that you're applying also circular solutions to the textiles and garments and sectors, which are so important for the Ethiopian economy. Great, thank you again very much. We're just going to switch back to Mr. Mokoena. Maybe if you have one more minute, just to maybe some remarks to conclude your presentation.
Thank you, and apologies for earlier on technological glitches. I was mentioning the coming into effect of the regulations for extended producer responsibility as part of our circular economy implementation for waste in lighting, paper and packaging, as well as electronic and electrical equipment, which is EPR that we're already implementing underway. Reporting came live recently and busy with the implementation of EPR in those sectors. But there are sectors such as waste oil, pesticides, as well as batteries, where we had draft regulations or notices intending to introduce EPR in these waste streams as part of circular economy implementation. This involves obviously private sector, research institutions, civil society, among others, and hence the work with other strategic partners such as African Circular Economy Alliance, where a number of African countries are involved. We've developed, as the African Circular Economy Alliance, a market analysis research report that gave us 5 big bets for circular economy implementation in built environment, food, electronics, textile and fashion, as well as plastics, which is linked to paper and packaging example in South Africa. And these are some of the examples and the successes that can be achieved when implementing circular economy. Working with business, informal sector, we have about 62,000 waste pickers, which are part of the waste collection and management system. Awareness, very key in that we have collection at schools, through schools competition, working with other strategic partners, which promote awareness and the knowledge and the buy-in into circular economy from that early age, while there's also academic programs at other levels to further promote and implement circular economy and implement the circular economy principle in our national waste management strategy. Let me pause there for now, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mokoena, for the overview. And you mentioned the African Circular Economy Alliance, which is I think, a very important network, and hopefully it will, and South Africa as member, and hopefully many other countries can also join, because I think these opportunities to exchange on circular economy on a regional level are so important. Then to our next speaker, I think we're going to Mr. Oliver Boachi, you're special advisor to the Environment Minister in Ghana. Thank you for joining us today. And you know, Ghana is really active when it comes to the startup scene and small innovative businesses. How does the policy circular economy link to those developments?
Thank you very much. And to all of you, and also for the opportunity to make these brief contributions to the discussion. Now, Ghana has adopted policy to base our national resource management strategy on circular economy. Now, the reason is very simple. Ghana has recognized that the world is changing, and it is not changing because we just want to change. Now, as a result of the way we have extracted our natural resources, made products out of them and consumed them, we recognize that we are depleting our resources at an alarming rate. In most cases, we are destroying our lands, and we have polluted our air, our oceans, and our rivers. Now, a central pillar of this self-destruction is the linear patterns of irresponsible production and consumption, one that is creating abundant and unnecessary waste, which only serves as reservoirs for bacteria and viruses that end up killing us. Therefore, we have realized that we have to change, and that change is a transition to circular economy. Now, in terms of the challenges that we are facing today, there's very rapid population growth in our country. There's a great deal of urbanization and socioeconomic development, and associated with this numerous lifestyle changes. These are leading to significant growth in product consumption and, of course, waste generation. Now, the main products and sectors that we have focused on, therefore, are plastics, electronics, textiles, food, and construction. For example, in 2020, Ghana generated close to 1 million metric tons of plastic waste. And out of this, less than 10% was recycled. Although 23% of this end up in designated dump sites, only 23% of the total end up at the engineered landfills. 15% is destroyed through open burning, causing greenhouse gas emissions and persistent organic pollutants. A staggering 8 to 10% ends up in the sea. Now, the rest, which is about 10 to 13%, reside in our neighborhoods, our drainage systems, at illegal dam sites, and at unengineered landfills. Now, consistently, municipal waste disposal has stood out as a very big challenge for our country, particularly in the urban areas where there is very high population. They produce large volumes of refuse, and they have no efficient waste management systems and services. There are several factors for this. First, there's very weak control and management of transboundary movement of goods and products, especially pre-owned products such as electronics, automobiles, plastics, textiles, etc. Now, most of these products are manufactured elsewhere and imported into our country. So there's very little control on their design and production. And in addition, the customs procedures and facilities are not strong enough to prevent the importation of products that are essentially non-recyclable waste that is being dumped into the country. There's also a lack of waste collection infrastructure, logistics, and services that will ensure that we collect the after-use remains of these products so that nothing becomes waste. We also need financial resources together with private sector investments that will make the transition sustainable. and we are not able to hold those who defy the rules and regulations about pollution accountable. Above all, there's a need to educate our people and create awareness for them to understand the roles that they play as producers, as consumers, and as citizens, so that we can all succeed in the transition. So what are we doing in the country to address these? And that comes back to the question that we are asking. Our direction is to develop a well-planned transition program that is backed by law. Currently, we don't have that as they do in other countries. Now, Ghana's circular economy policy will make prevention, then recovery and disposal its main guiding principles. This means that the first step is to prevent waste as far as possible. Then any residual substances arising are comprehensively recycled. And finally, the remaining residues should be disposed of in a manner that promotes public good. In order for us to achieve this, you need to fully understand the principles of circularity and how to apply them at every stage of the value chain for each of the productive sectors of our economy. The policy will make clear provisions for businesses and the public sector, such as a mandatory percentage of recycled materials in manufacturing, waste prevention targets, and much higher recycling rates. It will also ensure that there's a firm commitment from the public sector to prevent waste and to include recycled materials, material criteria and public procurement processes. Now, there are some basic things that we are doing in the country right now. And the key thing, the first one that I want to talk about is a project that is being funded by the Global Environment Facility. This GEF-funded project basically is establishing a framework for circular economy for plastics in Ghana. It's a grant facility that is provided by GEF, and the implementing agency is UNIDO. And our ministry, which is the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology, and Innovation, is the executing agency. Basically, we are looking at the pillars of a circular economy and how they can be established firmly in Ghana. The first one, of course, are the policies, the standards, the regulations, and the framework that will ensure that we are not generating waste, we are designing properly, we are importing the right things, and so on and so forth. The next thing is making sure that we have a very effective waste management infrastructure in the country. And the other things that are associated with that, the financing, the investments that are required within the value chain, to make these things possible. Also, yes.
Thank you. I don't. Apologies if I cut you short, but I've been not a very good moderator with the time. But if we could just stop here. But I wanted to highlight the point that you made about the UNIDO project with the GEF. I think it's really important to have these international corporations. If you could share a link to that project so people can have a look at it. And the other thing I think that you mentioned about the import of products that are not designed in Ghana, and I think and little influence on these. I think that's also an area for policy cooperation internationally. I think it's really important on the design aspect. Maybe just if you have like 30 seconds to conclude, and then we need to move to the next speaker. Apologies.
Yes. Well, you were asking about the role of the private sector and the small and medium-sized enterprises within the things that we are doing. This GEF-funded project is actually providing both financial and technical support for as many as about 15 to 20 small and medium-sized companies that are operating within the plastic value chain to ensure that they have both the capacity financially and technically to be able to scale up their businesses, employ more people, and ensure that our transition to circular economy in plastics becomes successful.
Great, fantastic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining today and the overview. And also, there are lots of interesting and important questions in the chat. If all the speakers could have a look and maybe type answers to those, but we need to move to the next speaker of our session. This is Ms. Pirine Kasonde from Zambia Environmental Management Agency. Hello, welcome. Thanks for joining. Could you give us an update about the situation in Zambia in terms of circular economy policy developments?
Thank you very much. My apologies. My director was supposed to be in this meeting, but he's attending another meeting in Kigali, so he's unable to join. So I was standing for Dr. Doti Chibamba, who's our Director General at Zambia Environmental Management Agency. I'm equally actually out of station. I'm in the field. Yeah, so I had to borrow a room to do the work from. However, for the Zambian situation of the circular economy, Zambia has a Vision 2030 that we actually has some precepts or some direction in terms of how we take care of our environment, and then it also emphasizes on the need to protect the environment, which is a cornerstone for development. So the past 20 years, as a nation, we've actually developed a national policy on environment, which was adopted in 2007. And then later on, we've gone ahead and developed the Environmental Management Act, which is subsidiary legislation in terms of taking care of the environment. Really, in terms of synergies, we have seen that this particular development has really helped us to have trade-offs between the environment and socio-economic objectives in terms of what the Vision 2030 aspires for. So further in 2021, actually the government developed or created a ministry responsible for green economy as one of the ways to respond to the emerging issues when we look at the circular economy. So in terms of how Zambia addresses issues of the circular economy is that we realize that the circular economy actually is a cross-cutting issue in that you look at issues of the environment and you also look at aspects of the social issues. So in the Environmental Management Act, actually, even though it was developed in 2011, it had already taken care of some issues to do with the circular economy unknowingly, but then it was all about managing pollution and also protecting human health as well as the environment. So under the Environmental Management Act, cleaner production and sustainable consumption was taken care of in that the issues of the institution which is mandated, in this case, Zambia Environmental Management Agency, was mandated with making sure that natural resources are consumed and also goods and services are produced in such a way that we look at issues of pollution and how we prevent unsustainable consumption of resources. It further went to provide for issues of extended producer responsibility, in that every producer of a product is supposed to take care of that product once it becomes waste in the environment. So really, when you look at the principles of a circular economy within Zambia, we look at issues to do with design out and eliminate waste and pollution. Though like Ghana had stated, we don't produce most of the goods that we consume in our country. So when you look at product design, we have less control over it. But then we also look at the minimization of waste as well as prevention and disposal. If we have to dispose, but really what we want in the circular economy is to minimize the amount of waste that is being produced, and mostly you look at it from the point of either reuse or recycling, or making sure that what we have coming out of production actually doesn't end up in the environment. So really, what other issues are we looking at when we look at the circular economy? We look at businesses also that are involved in either providing services or producing goods or actually distributing goods. So under the Environmental Management Act, we also have the Extended Producer Responsibility Regulation that actually looks at every producer, every distributor, and all those that are involved in the value chain of waste to take responsibility. And we do have initiatives that have come in. So we have community initiatives. At community level, we also have initiatives that are trying to run waste management or recycling as a business. So we have the community involved, but then when you look at the percentage of a community that is involved, we have very much less involvement of a public sector. Mostly, I think what we have is the informal sector where the collectors are not registered, and the collection actually most of the time is not, the data that is coming from their activities is not recorded. So you see that because of the informal nature of the activities, we cannot produce or we cannot collect any data from there because they're not registered anywhere. But one of the strategies that we're trying to put in place is to look at how we can help formalize such businesses to make sure that as they are doing the business, we are also able to regulate them, and they are also able to access some technology of some sort in terms of also technical assistance as well as financial resources, because when they are informal, it's very difficult to help them source for funds and all those things. Industry for us is very crucial in that they are at the center of actually the circular economy, because they are either the ones that are producing, or they are the ones that are packaging, or they are the ones actually that are distributing those goods. And when you look at sustainable consumption, they are the ones that are utilizing energy. So we're looking at how we can actually involve them when we look at the law that looks at sustainable consumption, to make sure that we look at issues of how resources are consumed, and also encourage recycling, and also producing goods that can last long, and rather than goods that don't last long within our environment. So with that, the extended producer responsibility has also looked at issues of plastic. So when you look at plastic, Zambia has actually gone with a partial ban, in that we've put in a regulation that regulates plastic bags as well as flat bags, in that you cannot produce plastic bags and flat carrier bags that are above 30 microns. So right now we have facilities that are producing plastics. We have facilities that are actually recycling that plastic. but then the uptake is very low because of practices that do happen in that the waste is commingled. So in terms of recycling, it becomes very expensive and it becomes very difficult, because then you have to look at a balance between consuming more resources in trying to recycle and looking at the viability of recycling those particular products, and later on also looking at the quality of the recycled products if they are not well segregated right from the beginning. So industry is very important. We collaborate with industry in those areas, but what's very difficult is that we don't have incentives. The law does not provide for incentives in terms of those that are recycling. So you see that even when recycling is taking place, a lot of facilities, actually a lot of businesses struggle to actually break even because there's no incentives in those areas.
Ms. Kasonda, thank you. I think, apologies. I think this is a very important point again. The role of businesses and how to support businesses with incentives in terms of also what policy can do here. We've heard that also in a number of other presentations. Just because of time, I think we need to stop here and move to the next speakers. Thank you so much for providing this overview. I think also you mentioned the plastics. This is a topic that will keep becoming more important also with the plastics treaty that is being negotiated. So yeah, thank you very much, and we hope to keep in touch and hear more of the developments in Zambia.
Thank you.
So thank you. And so thank you, everyone. So we're concluding the first session, and where we focused on the policy developments in the African continent. And we're now moving to the next session. Thank you all for joining. So we again have a lineup of very high-level policy makers from across the world, and we go straight to the first speaker. We're going to hear from Mr. Nguyen Dinh Tho, Director General of the Institute of Strategy and Policy on Natural Resources and the Environment from the government of Vietnam. And yes, Vietnam has been working on an action plan for the circular economy, and that's been often talked about. Could you provide us some more information of the latest development, please? Welcome, thanks for joining.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. And in Vietnam, we have started to regulate the circular economy since 2020, when circular economy is required under the law of environment protections. And in the law, we require that the circular economy will have to certify the criteria that is to reduce the use of raw material, especially fossil fuel, and prolong the life of the material and the product in the life cycle, and also to reduce the waste and not to harm the environment. That is the 4 criteria that we require by the law. And under the law of environment protection, we have issued the decree number 8 on the environment protection, and require that we have the roadmap for the circular economy. And under that plan, we will have the regulation on the green taxonomy that will be issued by the Prime Minister at the end of this year. And we will have the national plan for circular economy to be issued by the Prime Minister at the end of next year. And at the moment, ISPONRE is responsible for designing the national plan on circular economy. We focus on some of the area. Firstly, we require that circular economy will be integrated into the strategy, policy, and planning of ministry and local government. And also we encourage enterprise to integrate circular economy into their strategy and supply chain, starting from the extracting of the raw material, processing, manufacturing, deliver, consuming, and collecting of the waste, segregation of waste as source, and treatment of waste, and reminding the waste. That all the process has been designed to meet our commitment of net zero by 2050. And because that we focus on the area of NDC, Vietnam has a commitment on the NDC that we will reduce the emission by 9% by 2030. And with the support of the international partnership, we will increase to 27%. And the area that we focus on, including agriculture, transportation, and industrial process, construction and mining, and treatment of waste, and also land use chain and forestry, all the area requiring the NDC. In terms of the circular economy, we focus on the waste stream. The priority is put on the plastic waste stream as the first priority. And the second priority of us is the electric equipment waste stream. And we also work on other waste stream, including glass, metal, wood, and biomass, and oil, and other things. Throughout the law on environment protection, we design a number of regulations to support the circular economy. One of that is the extended producer responsibility, and we have the roadmap to implement the extended producer responsibility until 2030, including all of the waste stream that I have been mentioned. And we also have a number of encouragement for investment in terms of circular economy, including the green procurement, green credit, green bond, and other investment privilege, including reducing the price of land and reducing the taxes to encourage the circular economy. And we have put the roadmap from now on to 2025, and from 25 to 2030, and from 2030 to 2035. And the final of that, we will focus on how to make the segregation of waste as sort effectively, and to collect the waste and to reproduce it and make it the economy of scale that's large enough for recycling as cheap as possible, so it will be feasible for us to complete the loop of the circular economy. And I'm very pleased to share with you all of that, and I hope to receive information from other countries regarding to the regulation on circular economy. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for this overview. Very interesting to hear the roadmap as you're designing it in 5-year stages up to 2035. That's really interesting to learn about. And then we move straight to our next speaker. And this is Ms. Fahina Ahmed, Secretary of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change in the government of Bangladesh. Are you there, please? The floor is yours. I'd like to, yes, please give us an update of recent developments in Bangladesh. Especially, I think it would be also really interesting to hear about circularity in Bangladesh textile and ready-made garment industry, which is one of the key sectors for the Bangladesh government in the economy. I think there might be some technical issue. Maybe just jump to the next speaker first in that case. We come back to Dr. Ahmed later. Mr. Melvin Gabriel Garcia Lopez, Ministry of Environment, Guatemala. Are you there? Yes, I can see you here.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, good afternoon.
Hello.
Thank you. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, dear colleagues. On behalf of the Patch Ministry of Natural Resource and Climate Change, Frederick Chiroy, receive and according grading. My name is Melvin Garcia, advisor of Climate Change Mitigation Department, and it's a pleasure for me share a little option of the circular economy in Guatemala. Activities to move towards the circular economy. To put in context, activities to move towards the circular economy are present to overcome the barriers present by the use of the linear economy, but each mechanism has its focus, so the combination of these will be increase the potential success of the circular economy over the activities of the linear economy. Innovate regulatory mechanism. For example, we propose the objectives of this offer a legal framework that consider the circular economy so that it promotes the undertaking of focal projects and the innovation of products and services. Incentives, for example, the types of instrument that we can be used as incentives are assistance or compliant technical assistance, credit with favorable condition, low interest, seized capital financial proposal, or for enterprises, tax incentives in the partner with national institutions that allow the application of this, for example, exclusion of VAT or zero tax. Another context or activities to move towards the circular economy are research, the knowledge transfer, that advantage of educational structure, primary, basic, and careers, for example, high school, to transfer knowledge that is relate or the principle and benefits of the circular economy, circular production systems, consumers of circular production and services, food system, and the circular economy, nature and the circular economy. And the point 4, communication and citizen culture. We saw this is very important. Communication and citizen culture are important for the municipal circular economy action plan, because is it a way to strengthen or ensure that population of the municipality of Guatemala will have a common line of Diao. The construction of instruments that stimulate the supply and demand of the circular products and services. Consumers who propose products or services that have been manufactured under the principle circularity, information available on the comprehensive waste management of product sectors that implement circularity, environmental management plans, companies that have extended responsibility in their products or packaging of their products, companies that work the management of waste and common and industrial waste of third parties, the portion of the separation of residues and waste at the resource of generation, the operational improvement of companies that are dedicated to recycled materials to reduce the dispersion of microplastic and the water and in the environment. In Guatemala, we have 3 lines priorities of actions. For example, they are organic waste, packaging and material containers, and construction or demolition waste. Some goals to organic waste are for 20% by 2022 tons common organic waste use, and in 2023, 50%, and we have a goal by 2025 of 10%. Number of enterprise development of the management of the organic waste, designed environmental management program for plastic by 2022, regulatory proposal to regulate organic waste. For example, we have a design regulatory proposal in 2022, apply the standard with the design in 22. These actors are involved in this action. They are direction management, environmental direction management, direction of management and hiding results, municipal enterprise center, and we have also direction management and holding resource and solid waste. We have in the third line, the packaging and material container, we have many goals. For example, one of these indicators are separation of packaging and container from the waste and common solid waste, environmental management of plastic packaging and containers, use the packaging and containers, regulatory proposal to extend the responsibility in the industry on packaging and containers. We have these goals improved to 2024. We expect to have an 100%. And the last line we have on the construction and demolition waste. One of these indicators will be rate of utilization of construction and demolition waste, 5% by 2024, 10% by 2023, and 50% by 2024. Percentage of construction projects that use recycled construction or demolition waste, 5% by 2024, 10% by 2023, and 50% by 2024. In these indicators, some actors involves direction of management and holding of residues and solid waste, Department of the Environment of the Municipality of Guatemala, direction of management on holding and residues and solid waste, and Department on the Environment of the Municipality of Guatemala. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Lopez. I think the point that you made about setting specific targets for specific years, for example, the one on organic waste and the percentage of construction, I think these are really important. Also, government setting these quantitative targets. Thank you. And then, thanks. Now we go over to Dr. Ahmed from Bangladesh. Hello. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Is it okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, respected moderator, Mr. Patrick Schroeder, Senior Research Fellow at Chatham House, distinguished speakers, guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Warm greetings from Bangladesh. While listening to other presenters and distinguished speakers, I was just thinking that we are not struggling or we are not facing challenges with circular economy alone. There are many others have different challenges, and interesting to listen all of them. And to also, it's a learning opportunity for us to gather the experiences, what is happening around and how we could utilize those experiences. To talk about Bangladesh circular economy experience, I would like to mention in one word, it is yet to develop and flourish with its full potential. We all know that Bangladesh is a growing economy. The rapid pace of urbanization, technology adoption, and overall development has increased the consumption and the amount of waste generation in the country. And specifically, COVID-19 has increased the use of single-use of plastics by increasing reliance on single-use personal protective equipments. Bangladesh Perspective Plan 2041 and our ongoing 5-year plan focus on the fruitful application of the improved waste management and introduction of circular economy for sustainable use of resources. Government has taken numerous steps towards sustainable waste management. We consider that understanding the problem is the first part, and then making policy framework, and then going for implementation. Recently, government adopted solid waste, talking about the policy arrangement and the frameworks to deal with the waste management. We promulgated Solid Waste Management Rule 2021 and Hazardous Waste E-Waste Management Rules 2021, which have a provision of introducing extended producer's responsibility. Producer, manufacturer, or importer or brand owner of the product should take the liability at their end to extend responsibility for ensuring the environmentally sound management of their product and the circularity. Multi-sectoral action plan towards sustainable plastic management has been prepared, where different milestones are targeted to be achieved by 2030. Department of Environment took a 3-year special program on itemized banning of single-use plastic in coastal areas, which is expected to bring significant impact against marine pollution. It is projected in Perspective Plan 2041 that urban population will increase 80% of the total population, and then modern waste disposal facilities have to reach 100%. So our Perspective Plan acknowledges the importance of public-private roles and partnership in this regard. We are producing solid waste of approximately 30,000 tons per day, which has been projected to rise up to 47 tons per day by 2025. That is equivalent to 17.2 million tons per year. And undoubtedly, like other developing countries, Bangladesh is also facing the challenges of managing its solid waste, especially the plastic. The uses of disposable plastic are increasing due to its low cost and multi-purpose uses. Right now, more than 10% of total mixed solid waste contains plastic. However, only 40% of total plastic is recycled, and remaining 40% used for landfill dumped and 20% dumped into the water bodies. Waste can be utilized as resource. Once waste can be used as other raw material, it is understood by the government. It is also considered as a great source of environmental pollution if not properly managed. Improved waste management includes proper collection, segregation for reuse, recycle, environmentally sound and disposal. Capacity building of concerned stakeholders, both at the public sector and the private sector. Their awareness, strengthening, monitoring, and enforcement would be favorable for the improvement. It is in our plan. Current study shows that only 4 to 15% of the total generated waste is being recycled by the informal sector, and circular economy approach would be an appropriate solution to this problem, which allows the material constantly flow around a closed loop system rather than being used once and then discarded. Under Solid Waste Management Rules 2021, private sector product manufacturer or importer can take joint initiative with the local government authorities for the establishment of waste collection and environment-friendly disposal. Eventually introducing a circular economy for recyclable goods such as paper, metal, glass, and plastic would create an employment opportunity, and if the business model can run sustainably. We are exploring those opportunities relating to fast-moving consumer goods. The product modification as well as change of raw materials may be required to ensure circularity of the market. Moreover, alteration of packaging, change of consumers' behavior would be highly required in coming days. The major challenge of circular economy is the absence of formal data, recording practice accompanied by unwillingness of institutions to share quantitative information, and make accounting resource flow quite difficult. Moreover, the understanding of circular economy is not homogeneous across all the sectors in the country. Therefore, the lack of incentives and market mechanisms hinder the planning end of life uses of resources and recovery. Till date, inadequate research in this field also stands as a barrier to exploring new business models and employment opportunity with respect to building circular economy. However, the past lacuna of knowledge regarding different industries, processes, and the environment in Bangladesh is a significant hindrance to informed and appropriate policy making. So actually, we are trying from different angles to address the issue and develop towards a circular economy development. We need a collaboration to overcome the situation. I'd be happy to get more comments and suggestions from the audience, learned audience. Before concluding my remark, once again, I would like to thank you, organizer, for giving us opportunity in this prestigious program. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad. And I also emphasize the point that you made, the need for cooperation and collaboration between countries is so important. There's so many common challenges, and cooperation can help to overcome those. Thank you again for your presentation. And now we move on to our next speaker. It's Mr. Ichiro Adachi from JICA, from Japan. And we will not, slightly different, maybe we can hear something about how JICA is working with your partner countries on the circular economy and the Japanese experiences in terms of their relevance. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. So this is Adachi, and thank you very much for giving my time to present in this very, very important opportunity. And thank you very much. So, but today I received a lot of the subject homework. So in this occasion, first necessary to introduce the circular economies and the challenges, roadmap challenges, and the importance, at the same time, good lessons and learn in Japanese experience. But you know that we don't have much time. So how do we focus? How do I focus to this opportunity? I a little bit so have problem. Anyway, so at first, so already you said that I work in the JICA. So it means I'm in the field of international cooperation activity. At the same time, I'm expert in the field of environment management. So just around 10 years ago, I moved the section which is in charge of environment management issue. Main issue is wastewater treatment plant, wastewater treatment matter, and the solid waste management issue. But just around 10 years ago, still solid waste management is not critical issue. Of course, in already not only the developed country, but also developing country, emerging country, already solid waste management is very quite important problem. But still 10 years ago, like this is not highlighted. But today I'm very surprised at very, how to say, happy. Anyway, almost country now considering to integrate any policy for realizing circular society and circular economy. So this, how this movement also the change, we should feel at the same time we should go forward to realize circular society and circular economy. Well, so but anyway, so I don't have much time. So a little bit I'd like to share some document for make participants understand more clearly. Anyway, so maybe you see. So anyway, circular economy. So now so far we just a little bit, we would like to focus on the waste management, sound waste management, like a recycle society and a circular society. But so in my understanding, circular economy is for social development is very important too. So in Japan, not only in Japan, like EU, United States, already so there are social economic development too, circular economy is considered. So in Japanese case also, so Prime Minister Kishida clearly state new capitalism policy for developing Japanese economy, but at the same time, sustainability, ecology and equity, and this kind of word also is important. Well, it means for developing social and economy, so quite important to realize circular society and circular economy. So in my opinion, also in my feeling, already world society and the world community already confirmed this issue. So in this context, maybe also I don't explain about this matter in the Germany, in the European countries, already donuts economies concept already has been realized. So Japanese case about the trends of waste generation in Japan. So around 1917, 1918, so Japanese economy so could realize very rapid economic development. Of course, due to this kind of rapid economic development, it cause a huge amount of waste also. So this amount so immediately increase. And once again, this bubble economy period also once again, Japanese economy very integrated. So during this period also total amount of waste also increased. But after that, total amount of the waste in Japan very stabilized like this. But in this context, so around 2000, so in Japan, we enacted enhancement of the Basic Act for establishing a sound material cycle society. So in Japanese case, 2000, we call the starting point of circular society and circular economy. So in the Japanese fundamental law framework, a little bit so difficult to explain all during this time. So anyway, the Basic Act for establishing a sound material society, 2000, this law is enacted. Under this law, there are two laws which are existing. Waste Management Act, Effective Resource Utilization Promotion Act. There are two laws existing. Why there are two laws existing? Maybe you understand for production cycle, for material cycle, maybe there are main two processes. First is product cycle. Second is waste management cycle. Sometimes upper stream area, sometimes lower stream area we call. But in Japanese case, so production cycle is managed by Ministry of Economy and Trade and Industry, and the lower stream area, like waste management area, is controlled by Ministry of Environment. So in Japanese case, in each law, each ministry control and cover of two different these area. So there are two main laws existing for realizing circular economy society. Well, now in this context, so Ministry of Economy so establish circular economy vision to 2020, focus on transition towards more circular business model or diversion from the market, re-establishment of resilient resources. So anyway, focus on the production process. On the other hand, Ministry of Environment, so like a basic in the fifth basic environment plan, so circulating ecological economy plan policy has been established by Ministry of Economy. Anyway, so Japanese future point of circular society, circular economy. Anyway, there are two main area are existing. So, but compare if sorry, we don't have much time. Sorry, if I compare.
Apologies, maybe just quickly to wrap up.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. So, anyways, finally, so just only the good example only and direct to introduce. Anyway, so in the small towns, so like Tokushima-ken, Kamikaze, just on the 1,000 community, but already 80% recycle has been achieved. So this kind of recycle station already installed, and then each community bring their waste to this recycle station and the separation at this station. This kind of trial already has been achieved in Japan. So of course, this is a small town, but the big city and the middle city also, this kind of already trial started. Anyway, this kind of the model, so existing, we'd like to show and show and would like to introduce this kind of title in Japan. Well, just finally, so just only the Japanese lesson, how much more stakeholder should try to be involved. At the same time, cost fund recovery system also is very important. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Adachi. Thank you very much. And apologies for
no problem
cutting this short. There's a lot of information. Be happy if you're happy to share the slides with the participants afterwards. I think that would be very helpful to look at the presentation. And I was also pleased to hear that you were mentioning also circular society as a concept. So it's not only about the economy, but also about societal transformation. Apologies again, and thank you for your contributions.
Thank you very much.
And last apologies. So last but not least, our speaker now is Ms. Irma Guguliani, who's Deputy Head of the Waste and Chemicals Management Department, the government of Georgia. Welcome, thank you for joining. And please give us an update of what's happening in the circular economy in Georgia.
Thank you for inviting me here with such broad, people and people from around the world, to speak about and sharing this experience of circular economy developments in their own countries. Of course, that's important that we are talking about and sharing our experiences here. And from our side, Georgia is a part of this world, of course. We are also struggling to develop the circular economy strategy for the country right now. We started just a year ago, and anyway, even before that, we created governmental, the council, which is led by our deputy minister. So with support of Swedish government, actually, we provided quite in-depth study, to come up with the areas actually which will be most important for our country. And it should be mentioned for my side, as a Waste and Chemicals Management Department, the waste, of course, is the part of the main focus, I would say, which will create some backgrounds, to think about the circular economy development in our country, and we will contribute, I am pretty sure. So, but even in terms of legislation and strategy on waste, we are quite new, I would say, because the framework law on waste we created in 2015, actually, which is harmonized with the EU directive, and all the bylaws comes also be harmonized, many of bylaws also with the EU directives and regulations. So it should be mentioned the framework law, of course, includes the extended producer responsibility developments, and just a year ago we have developed 4 bylaws. One is the electric and electronic waste, which is also harmonized with the EU directive on WEE, and also we have used oils, tires, and batteries and accumulators. So it entered into force in this year, and we started the enforcement in this year. So we are quite new in this regard, but what's most important for us, even during the drafting of those legislation, all the producers were involved. And now we have 4 PROs already created for different streams. So there are many, but the first recycling national targets, the requirement, they have to meet in the next year, by the end of the next year. And we created these recycling rates for all these 4 streams. And beside of that, also, we already drafted 2 bylaws regarding the packaging. regulation, and also another is the end-life vehicles. So all the producers are already involved in the processes, and we do hope that we will approve very soon those bylaws as well. So, I mean, this progressive, I mean, how to say, the law development, it created actually huge interest from recyclers. And in the last 2 years, there is quite increase of recycling investment in our country. So what's important also that in terms of strategic development in waste legislation, we have already 15 years of strategy on waste and 5 years of, I mean, it's like required according to the framework law. This is the National Action Plan on Waste Issues. So, and this is like a national framework, but at municipal level also it's required for each of the municipalities to develop their own waste management, municipal waste management action plan according to the national one. And also companies are getting obliged to submit their company's waste management action plans to the ministry, which we are approving, and then monitoring is also going through the ministry. That really increased the interest of the by their own, I mean, in terms of producer, like to take care on their own generated waste. And of course, there are also private sector, especially when it comes to the hazardous waste management. Of course, they are trying to recycle at national level, but also import and export is also very acting. I mean, in terms of hazardous waste, not all the waste can be recycled in country. So in these cases, we are exporting, of course, according to the Basel Convention, and we are party to the Basel Convention. And national legislation also allows them, I mean, to be part of this, I mean, broad cooperation under the Basel Convention. So, of course, the challenges still we have there, because separation at source at municipal level, there are some pilot projects. Some of the major cities, of course, they started, especially on plastic bottles they are collecting, and it's recycled. But I mean, even most of the municipal waste, they are ending up to the landfills. I mean, in terms of landfills also, we have right now all type of landfills, but still there is projected also to create sanitary landfill according to the EU directives. We already have this bylaws already approved. So according to that, we will issue the environmental permits, and of course there will be also as the municipalities they start separation at source, also there will be segregation before it ends up on the landfill. So there are many acting plans, I mean, and with the donor support, actually, most of the activities which we have done, it's provided with support of donors, USAID or EU funds or some direct funding from donor countries. We receive quite a lot, and of course for the landfill also, there are EBRD and KfW also investments. So, I mean, in this regard, yes.
I think that's a really important point that you just made here about also the investments that are coming through the multilateral development banks.
Yes.
I think we hope to see more of this as well, that MDBs will be expanding also their circular economy programs in the future. Hopefully that seems to be likely that there will be then also more international support. And
especially when it comes to the biodegradable waste, which is the composition Actually, in the municipal waste, it's half, I would say 50% it's biodegradable waste, which we really have already in our strategy. So we'll pay more attention to this issue, and maybe MBTs or other composting, some piloting, these kind of issues will be started. So what's most important, that producers are very keen. I mean, just awareness raising, which is needed really, even to give this opportunity directly to the producers, actually, to think about the circularity model. But it's not easy, because from linear model, it's not easy, I mean, to turn on. But incentives should be created at governmental level, I would say, which will really contribute and support this kind of ideas. And maybe that will really help the development of circularities. I mean, all the models, whatever it's then waste or agriculture or many other natural resources. I mean.
Yeah. Yes. Great. Yeah. Thank you again. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I can understand that sensation is coming also.
The next session is coming as well. Yes, yeah. Exactly. So, so we're concluding. Thank you for this overview of the situation in Georgia. So we're concluding our session here. My apologies again to all the speakers if you weren't able to say all the things that you planned to. Again, also thank you for joining today. This was really inspiring and really insightful. And now I hand over to Apurva for the final session.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I'm Apurva Arya, and I'm going to be the moderator for your session, for this session. I would like to, first of all, thank all the panelists in this session for being so understanding and accommodating with their time, especially with the varied time differences. Our panel will discuss the role of international organizations, think tanks, and UN agencies in promoting circular economy policies in emerging economies. And joining us for this panel session, we have with us Jocelyn Diao, the Executive Lead Institutions, Governments and Cities at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, Mr. Mushtaq Ahmed Memon, Regional Coordinator, Asia Pacific Regional Office at the United Nations Environment Program in Bangkok, Mr. Ignacio Sanchez Diaz, Program Manager Officer at United Nations Environment Program in Nairobi, Jocelyn Landry Sunang, Executive Team Member at African Circular Economy Network, and finally, Enrique Pacini, Economics Affairs Officer at the United Nations Conference for Trade and Development from Geneva. So our session will primarily discuss two topics. First, we will discuss the challenges emerging economies face when developing circular economy policies, and the key role organizations can play in supporting these economies. And then later dive into experiences of our panelists on working with emerging economies. Joss, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has been a forerunner when it comes to working with national governments and policymakers. And with your experience of working with national policymakers, could you please give us an overview on the challenges emerging economies face in developing circular economy policies?
Thank you, Apurva. Thank you, everyone. And I'll thank Chatham House as well for co-organizing. And I'm really happy to see so many UN friends on the call as well. I suppose that there is one thing that think tanks like us can do to help the transition is really to create a common language and make sure that we're talking about the same thing when we talk about circular economy. And I was pleased to hear in the previous session a lot of mentions made of the notion of servicing human needs, but also looking at the societal dimension of the circular economy. It's a perspective which is really important, and Japan has a lovely way of talking about the sound material society. Circular economy is a project for society. It's not a technicality. What the difficulty is, of course, when it comes to emerging economies, specifically to answer your question, is that we have to be mindful of the fact that there is a different level of infrastructural maturity as well. There is a difference between markets that produce and markets that are on the receiving end of pollution. And it's very, very salient when it comes to the plastics issue. And we've seen, of course, as consumption rises in emerging markets, the weight of packaging becomes increasing. And because there is no collection or sorting infrastructure, then of course the pollution is almost immediate. And that is absolutely critical. So there is a need to understand that despite the fact that circular economy really is an upstream strategy that creates a society that innovates and that challenges the notion of value creation through consumption of finite resources, we have to start where the most pressing need is. And if that's recycling and waste management, well, so be it. But it is our role as well to make sure that circular economy is not treated as a waste management strategy only. It's not a technicality, but where appropriate, by all means, do start by creating the right conditions for the materials to flow back and make sure they don't end up in the environment. So that would be my first thing. And I'm sure that we're keen to have a quick fire conversation. So I'll just stop there and come back to you, 2 other points, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, Joss. I think you made a great point about talking about emerging economies have a totally different kind of infrastructures and systems in place that that needs to be also considered when we're talking about circular economy. And since you mentioned Japan and how they put it up, Mr. Memon, I'd like to ask you, there are 2 countries in Asia Pacific that are so advanced, right? Japan and South Korea. And what do you think we can learn from these 2 countries that can be implemented when promoting circular economy in the other countries in the Asia Pacific? And how can we take these lessons learned to help the others that are not that advanced right now?
Thank you, Apurva. So let me put first the perspective that how the lessons can be transferred, or how basically leapfrogging we can promote in other countries. So when we are talking about, like, as you mentioned, Korea, Japan, like they have their net zero targets, like 2050, for example. Now, when we talk about the zero, for many, it's a digit, but to achieve that digit, we look at the shape of zero, that's circular. So basically, when we are talking about the circular economy or closing the loop, again, smaller the size of zero, it looks better zero. That means closing the loop as local as possible. And with COVID-19, when the supply chains broke down, everything was even the recycling, everything went like really a big mess. Then again, there was a lot of creativity to develop the local solutions to cope up with all the needs and so on when the supply chains are not there, for example. So that gave us quite a good way to look at that. Now, when we say Japan, suppose, or Korea, they are the industrial countries. And when we see the industrial waste pollution management, basically it transformed from the so-called industrialized countries to the economies in transition to the developing countries. And that brought also the technologies which were evolved over the times, the lessons learned, the policies, and so on. So the latecomers' advantage to the developing countries was there. But when you talk about the current challenges, like Jocelyn was mentioning about the plastic pollution, which came all of a sudden to every country, or climate change, for example. So then countries do not have that lot of historical learning or technology innovations in that can help. So they have to work together. So my point here is that it's not about learning from Japan and Korea, but it's learning together, even for Japan and Korea. Suppose Japan's plastic management is mainly thermal treatment, like more than 80% is waste is incinerated for. So it's still chemical recycling is quite new, even in Japan and so on. So they all learning together. So that's my first or main point, that we have to learn together and we need to help each other to leapfrog, whether it's a technologies, whether it's a policy, whether it's a business models like APR or public-private partnerships and so on, or whether it's information tools, education, bringing the political leadership on board and so on. So if you see that many developing countries had rather a higher political will and leadership. So my point is every country has their strengths and weaknesses. So we can create like international organizations or think tank, we can help them or create enabling environment to leapfrog together rather than saying we should learn from country A or B. Thank you.
I think that's a great point that you mentioned, that learning together and like cooperation is the way to move forward. Like Joss also mentioned, circular economy as a strategy is for the people and the planet, and like, you know, building and growing within the planetary boundaries. And I think the last two sessions also talked about the importance of international cooperation in moving forward. In light of that, Enrique, what role can organizations, for instance, UNCTAD and other UN agencies can play in supporting, you know, this whole, creating this environment, enabling this environment where countries could learn from each other, and especially emerging economies?
Thank you, Apurva, for inviting us, and happy to be here in the panel with the colleagues from UNEP countries and NMF as well. Your question is broad. I'll try to narrow down my answer. Of course, circularity involves so many aspects at the trade angle. We initially think of how to make countries collaborate and cooperate on flows of secondary scrap materials, waste basically. But I think the juicy part is a bit on the design part, designing waste out of systems, especially collaborating on services to do that. Let me give you a quick example on something we're trying to do with some partners from civil society that very much touches the essence of helping countries design, find ways to collaborate on apply circularity. Together with the Quakers UN office in Geneva, we are discussing a study to map the regulatory barriers for packageless retail. So once upon a time, you used to go to shops and buy things without package, so without plastic containers. Just we bring your own container with your grains, cleaning materials, or any type of cloths, fabrics, any type of product, without having to actually come out of the shop with a plastic bag or a plastic bottle. And today, this model has been reduced, but it's coming back. But there are many regulatory difficulties to allow it to spread along different countries. So there are many companies attempting to do that across countries, and they face difficulties. So we're trying together with this NGO, to do some mapping of the regulatory barriers for companies to enter this space, of course, with a new modern dressing with a digital world, right? So this type of mapping of regulatory barriers helps countries to understand what kind of laws they need to touch in order to allow this designing waste out of the systems, packageless models to thrive. This, of course, complements the UNEA resolutions and ongoing discussions at the WTO on plastics. That's a precise example. Furthermore, I mean, I'll not extend myself too much here. As international organizations and large international NGOs like Chatham House, like Helen MacArthur here present, I think it's our role is to try to tie the regulatory patchwork together and provide information for countries on how they can regulate or structure their positions. Because diplomats alone have a hard time covering the whole spectrum or having the eagle's view of markets, be them regional or global. And of course, to provide a neutral platforms where countries can talk, discuss, and agree. The UN, in our case, and the case of Mushak as well, the UN unites. So our goal is to provide a neutral platform and to promote a regulatory commonality so that countries can find at least a minimum common denominators on how to advance. So yeah, Joss has a comment there. I'll stop here on my remarks, allow more time for Q&A. Thank you, Apurva.
Thank you, Enrique. I think you've opened the bottle of can of worms with solutions and already talked about like packageless retail and the regulatory barriers around it. I think let's move on to Ignacio and ask him with his experience within UN agencies in both Latin America and Africa, like which successful circular economy worked and why they worked, and we'd also like to know some of specifics around it, specific policies and so on and so forth from you.
Thank you, Apurva, and also thank you for the invitation to be part of it. Well, I think that the previous speakers they were already mentioning some of the challenges that I think they are similar in the different regions. Me coming and having worked for the last 5 years in Latin America, supporting this transition to circular economy, I can see and compare with some of these challenges, and how we as UNEP and other entities can support. So this area of collaboration, of course, is very important. The way that we can enhance this collaboration internally in the country, we have to promote this intergovernmental cooperation, because this is one of the challenges, that there's still a little bit of silo thinking, and sometimes you see that countries supporting this circular economy, there are still some issues between, or connections between finance or economic ministries working together with ministries of environment or ministries of industry. So that's something that we can and we are promoting. As Enrique was mentioning, providing these platforms for knowledge sharing and sharing best practices is very important. Examples like the Circular Economy Coalition for Latin America and the Caribbean, where also Helen MacArthur is participating together with UNEP and other entities. The African Alliance for Circular Economy and also at the global level, CACERE, are I think good examples of platforms to support this transition. And also there are now I have to say, now that I'm also in my new role as part of the science division in UNEP, I also see the area for supporting to translating this science into policy action. Is actually one of the key aspects where UNEP is working in strengthening this science policy interface, and there is a lot of science and a lot of knowledge generated from think tanks like Helen MacArthur, but we also need to provide these incentives or these these ways of translating this science into policy action. So working together with policy makers to understand, to create more capacity to implement some of these solutions is also very important, because there is something. This is something also for to highlight also, like and I think Josh also was mentioning. I think there is still at least in Latin America, what I perceive is there is still a lack of upstream solution or upstream policies. So most of the policies are looking into extended producers' responsibility, waste management, but there is still some room for improvement to work on design and to incorporate more this value chain approach, right? So we look into the full picture, and this is something that we also as international organization can support countries to look into this full picture, this value chain approach. So we also see these connections, right?
Yes, yeah. I think, Ignacio, that's a great point. Like, when we talk about circular economy, a lot of effort is downstream, and that's also the case for policy sometimes. That really needs to be, changed and really needs to be talked more about. Like you've also mentioned, how cooperation between government organization is important to build more capacity within this. And that's something that we really need to put in the forefront. Now I'm going to be moving on to Jocelyn. And since she's representing like an organization, the African Circular Economy Network, that has representatives from 30 countries in Africa, I'd like to know from you, can you share like how diversity among these African countries is a driving force for a circular Africa, and more importantly, how such pan-continent initiatives are the need of the hour to transition to a circular economy?
Thank you, Apuria, for this invitation, and thank you to the Circular Innovation Lab and Chatham House for putting this conversation together. So as you already said, the African Circular Economy Network has representatives in over 40 African countries. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to do through the network is really work on capacity building, because there's a lot of capacity gap on the continent in terms of circular economy. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we regularly organize webinar, and we also do promote knowledge sharing, competency sharing, and also technology sharing. And through our country representatives in various African countries, we also get in touch with the government because most of them are either members of civil society or are working in the government to also like raise awareness of government officials in terms of circular economy. We, for instance, as we are a strategic partner of the African Circular Economy Alliance, we also encourage governments where we have members to join the alliance by telling them why it is important for them and why they should do it. And in the course of doing this, we really noticed that there is a huge gap. And at times we think they have the information when they do not really have the information. So we serve like sort of a bridge and try to bring all the stakeholders together around the same table. And our members are also playing very active roles in circular economy projects, be it strategy, policy, or concrete projects on the ground happening in various countries. And we also make sure that things are done the right way. When we are invited maybe for stakeholder engagement session, we make sure that the policy that have been developed are actually addressing the problem how it should be, but not only like trying to do some circular washing. Like for instance, making sure that waste management strategies that are put into place are not just maybe reduced to incineration or maybe chemical management, but are really like closing the material loop. So those are some of the actions that we currently carrying on the ground to make sure we help the continent to have an inclusive and a sustainable transition to circular economy, and making sure no one is left behind in the course of this transition.
Just to kind of wrap up this topic around like how there's need to have policies that look at fixing solutions upstream rather than only having like a downstream focus. I'm going to slowly now turn this discussion around like the current and future global policies and their impact on emerging economies. And just last year, Ellen MacArthur Foundation published the Universal Circular Economy Policy Goals. Could you maybe explain briefly how this strategy will enable the transition at scale, especially for emerging economies?
Yeah, it is very important to really.
I'm sorry, confusion with the names. Sorry, Jocelyn. The question was directed at Joss.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks, Apurva. Yes, indeed, we published this document, which is, the title is obviously deliberately a bit provocative because universal is very grand. And the idea that we want to convey is that we're looking at a set of 5 principles which focus the discussion when it comes to governments that want to implement a circular economy strategy but don't know where to start. So the important thing we suggest is to have 5 main things in mind, which are the upstream part, what gets put on the market and why, can it cycle? The second part is making sure that we manage value and not manage waste only. The third part is about making the economics work. At the moment, all is in favor of linear economy. The fourth part is the investment in infrastructure, skills, and also education. And then the fifth one is collaboration around the goals, which is essentially an adaptation of SDG 17 to collaborate and make sure that it's defragmented. And the idea is to say, if you look at these things and you take them as an integral group as opposed to standalone pieces, the starting point should be roughly the same for all the countries, which means that when we get to, for instance, UNEA 4 and resolution on innovative pathways to sustainable consumption and production, acknowledging the role of circular economy, once you've said that, you haven't necessarily defined and given a mandate to the country saying, this is where you should start. A resolution on circular economy itself was adopted at UNEA 5, and we see all of that is growing. You know, the G20 communique contained 3 mentions of circular economy last year. So the context is here. What's missing is the how, and the how is what we've been trying to do to get a baseline for everybody to start with the same focus points in mind.
Thank you so much, Joss, for giving us this really brief explanation of like how the universal circular economy policy goals are framed by EMF. I would like to move to Mr. Memon now and like ask him, like, we also have like global policies, you know, impacting emerging economies, and I'm especially talking about the new EU strategy on textiles, and you know how it's proposing measures like labeling requirements and digital passports and so on. And I'd like to know, since you know Asia is the textile powerhouse of the world, how do you think this could impact these countries, and how can they adapt to kind of avoid any disruption within this?
Thank you. Okay, for textiles, as we all know, Asia is one of the biggest hubs for producing the textiles, but also consuming the textiles. If you talk about the consumption levels, number of people and all this. So the point here is that when you look on the value chain of textiles, and when you look on the impact of a textile production, textile consumption, and end-of-life textiles, not only in per se the environment pollution terms, but on all 3 planetary crises like nature and biodiversity loss, climate change, and obviously pollution, including from the chemicals coming out of the textiles or microplastics and so on. So when we look on this whole value chain of textiles in Asia, and it's surprisingly like a lot of SMEs, as most of the countries in Asia, like 80% of 90% of GDP is linked, manufacturing GDP is linked with the SMEs. So then how you are going to make a big shift? Because on the one hand, jobs at stake, livelihoods on stake. On the other hand, you have the supply side, as we saw in the COVID, when all of a sudden the supply chains broke down, even the masks and everything was not available. So even to have an international like a supply chains intact, for example, and then also to look on this whole downstream and upstream value chain with the textile, like a biomass, for example, or the synthetic fiber, or the end-of-life waste and recycling and so on, reuse and so forth. And surprisingly, again, like Japan, for example, where I spent my 20 years, you have huge number of they call the recycling shops, but that means the reuse shops, basically. So there's a lot of textiles getting into the reuse shops and even bought by the people living in Japan. So it's like not we talking about poor countries. And then also, if you look on the rental shops in Japan, for example, there's like expensive clothes are available for rental for wedding and so on. So you don't have to like waste for one like single use, I would say, textiles, for example. So there are very good examples in Asia starting from the production of the textiles to the consumption of the textiles and to the also the end of life. For example, consumption, like two major things are coming into now, that washing. Now, washing on the one hand brings the microplastics. So how you really, and all the, even the, I see the washing machine companies are really looking into that. Number two, the water for washing. And many countries, again, Japan, for example, they reuse the water from the washing machine for their horticulture, landscaping, and so on. So you have to think bigger. As I say, like think globally, act locally. So textile per se is not a textile. It's linked with all the three planetary crises: climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, and pollution. So how you connect all the dots to make textile sector more sustainable, it's like happening, but we can give a bigger push to make it happen sooner. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your in-depth insights in textiles, especially within Asia. Now, since we've moved into industries, I think we couldn't go without talking about trade, Enrique. So since you're our trade and circular economy expert, I'd love to, ask you this. Do you think an implementation of a circular economy in trade can disrupt our current trading system, and how will the global landscape cope with such a disruption? And what can we ensure? How can we ensure circular economy policies within trade can make this transition smoother when we talk about within countries cooperation and so on?
Thanks, Apurva. The word disruption connotes negativity, right? I think the gains of circularity, the yield value at the personal, domestic, like household level, at the country level, and also at the trade level. So more circular trade, when that involves many things, for example, a higher share of services vis-a-vis products, more circular trade tends to have higher value, I think, than linear trade. Because if we're counting on the externalities avoided, we surely tend to gain. So I think the work of circularizing trades is not trivial. It's like connecting neurons. Sometimes they don't connect very well. So you have to do the multilateral process and the national process and slowly connect them so that there's a harmony across some blocks, across key countries, and a dissemination effect, like a standard dissemination across the economy. It's not overnight adopted by countries, but there are gravity effects here. I think it's already taking place, and one good sign of that is that the notion of trade, the notion of the importance of doing cross-border regulatory work or cross-block regulatory work is not only being discussed on trade fora, but also on environmental fora, on standards fora, and many other areas. The UNEA resolutions, the last one, 5.2, attestates to that. The 14 resolutions have trade implications, not only the plastics one. Yeah, and finally, the trade involves cooperation, right? To patch the regulatory patchwork together, to sew it together. I think points mentioned by Ignacio, for example, on the Circular Economy Alliance for Latin America, is very important to create a platform where this sewing together or exchange of information can take place. We also heard from Jocelyn on the Circular Economy Network in Africa, which has provided great advice for one of our technical assistance projects, which is deploying 20 million pounds in project financing in Africa and Asia. So where to address, where to send this money, three type of projects. We are getting advice from ASEN, who is active in the region. So it's all about cooperating with the right stakeholders and to yield higher impact. We also have done that with JICA there was a speaker in the previous section, where we teamed up with the JICA back a few years ago in developing organic agricultural markets in Laos. They were doing a similar work, we were doing a similar work, so I think together we did a greater impact, created the Lao Organic Agriculture Forum there, which uses less fossil fertilizer and helps to decarbonize agriculture in the country. So yeah, I think I got a marginally answer to your question. Thank you, Apurva.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Enrique. And since you also mentioned Ignacio and his work with the LATAM Alliance in Circular Economy, I'd like to maybe ask you, Ignacio, about since UNEP is working on the Global Environment Outlook, GEO7, with a key focus on circular economy, we'd love to hear some more insights on this publication. What are the plans for it, and how do you think it could like benefit emerging economies in particular?
Sure. Thank you, Apurva. Well, for those that you might not know, the GEO, the Global Environment Outlook, is flagship global environmental assessment of UNEP, similar in the structure to other global assessment as IPCC or IPBES, but it has more like a general perspective because it evaluates not just one topic, but the state of the environment in a wider perspective. We are starting the 7th edition of GEO, which will build from the conclusions of GEO6, that they were very clear, showing that if we keep developing policies that try to clean up the impacts that we are generating, we will not be able to achieve the environmental goals of the different international agendas. We really need to attack the roots of the problems. So this is why the GEO6 suggested to focus on specific systems as energy, food, and waste in order to overcome this triple planetary crisis. So GEO7 is aiming to look into the solutions to these three systems, also the interconnected solution to these systems. And of course, circular economy, it will be one of the key and cross-cutting approaches because it's circular solutions will tackle problems in the three systems, into the energy, into the food, and into the waste systems, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, supporting the regeneration of biodiversity, and of course, reducing waste from design. So, well, we have a huge challenge ahead of us with this GEO7. So for the next 3 years, we are going to be working with top experts and scientists around the world. So we also bring perspectives from global south, global north, and all around the world to come together to propose these solutions. And the other challenge that we also want to tackle is like we will look to propose solutions that are relevant for the national level and relevant for emerging economies, of course, because as it was pointed before, there is no one fit for all solutions. So we also need to look to the realities of the different economies. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ignacio. It's great to know that it's a very solutions-focused GEO that is super ambitious, as what I hear from you saying. I'd like to conclude this session with the last question directed at Jocelyn, and then just trying to understand, the World Circular Economy Forum is happening in Rwanda this year, and we'd like to hear from you that how do you think this could be an opportunity for fostering further collaboration around circular economy topics in Africa and accelerating this transition in this continent, Jocelyn? Thank you.
Thank you, Apurva. So the World Circular Economy Forum is happening in Kigali, and the African Circular Economy Network is actually one of the co-hosts of the event together with CITRA and ASEAN. So we're very excited because at least now we know we are going to show African lens of circular economy to the world. So during our engagement with various policymakers in several African countries, so we get to understand their feedback on what they think about the circular economy trend. And one of their worries is will circular economy like actually help us solve the socio-economic challenges that we are facing? We want to provide water, electricity, we want to provide food to our people. So if circular economy is going to help us solve these challenges, then we are in. So I think this will be an opportunity to show what is being done already on the continent in terms of circular economy, and to further stress how circular economy can help African countries to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, when we know most countries are lagging behind in terms of achieving some of these important goals. So it's also be important to attract investors, because we know most of the national determined contributions of African country is on the condition of obtaining investment before most of the project can actually be achieved. So African economies are among the most vulnerable to climate change, but still the very little or the least polluter in terms of their amount of greenhouse gas emission. So it is very important, as the world is converging to Kigali, to see how Africa can further be supported in tackling this challenge, because we have only one planet. So it should be local action for global impact. So we are very excited and very much looking forward to the results of the World Circular Economy Forum that is going to happen in Kigali. And also through the local studios that will be happening in various African countries, we are going to have regional or national level discussion on how they should tackle circular economy, really get to the grassroots and get what the people at the grassroots level thinks about it. What are their challenges? What are the opportunities? And how they can further be supported in achieving a global and a just transition to circular economy.
Thank you so much, Josine. I think we should maybe also look at if we can pick a few questions from the audience, if they have any for our panelists before we wrap up this session. And I can quickly just go through some and see if we can, if there are any new ones that people want to ask, or, okay, I think I see one. Okay, we have a question, which is, are there any efforts ongoing in terms of supporting, promoting repair, remanufacturing activities? Repair rates tend to be pretty high in emerging economies, but often carried out in and by informal enterprises. Curious to understand how these are incorporated into policy frameworks. This question is from Manisha Ananturaman. Would any one of you, I can also copy paste.
I can have a quick crack if you want, Apova. I think it's really important to look at the fact that indeed materials recovery and remanufacturing is carried out by the informal sector, sometimes at great risk and in safety conditions which are very detrimental to the health of workers as well. It is also potentially a barrier to remanufacturing that some countries do not allow the import of remanufactured parts or cores when it comes to motors and engines and industrial machinery, for understandable reasons of protecting the development of their own economy and infrastructure. But I think in the grand scheme of things, the trade dimension should be taken into account, and compensation mechanisms should be fostered, because it's a double thing. It's a resource saving strategy. It's an energy saving strategy. And we know the International Resource Panel has been very clear on the potential of remanufacturing. It also helps professionalize a sector which does exist in any case, and that does really need to be upskilled and generate a higher level of income and a higher level of safety in operation. So to answer your question, are there already examples? Maybe not the best place to talk about this, but clearly in China, which can't be considered an emerging economy, there is a national strategy for the remanufacturing of vehicles, which includes the development of specific industrial parks.
Thank you so much, Manisha. I really hope that answers your question. We can also send you a written reply of what Josh said. I think we can take another question, and this is on, since Baisan Bauer, since this session is about the role of international institutions, my question is about financing the circular transition. What is happening in this area within IFIs and MDBs?
Yeah, please.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Mann.
Okay, so yeah, there's I mean, a lot of debate, even suppose when Sustainable Development Goals were being approved or agreed, and then we had a Addis Ababa action agenda on the finance for SDGs, for example. So we have to look on the different levels of financing. One is, okay, the financing from the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, Inter-American Development Banks, and so on. And that financing is quite, to me, is straightforward. Like, okay, that is like suppose in water sector, in energy sector, for example. So as we have seen the shift, like suppose after the Green Deal by EU and so on, that there's no more like loans for the coal economy and so on. So there's a shift, but it's not like a saying in the words is about the circular economy. Basically, it's about the environmental friendly technologies like green energy, green mobility, green housing, and so on. So basically that makes a bigger picture of all the circular models. So if we are looking in the words, then it's not easy. But when we are looking in the broader picture, it is there. Suppose now environmental social governance, ESG investments are picking up very rapidly. Again, ESG is all about the circular economy, or the promote the services or the products which help towards the circular economy. Or when we are talking about SDG 12.6, the sustainability reporting, that's basically the circular options within the industry, within the manufacturing, about their water use, their energy use, their emissions, and so on. So the whole point is that how do you look when you say financing for circular economy? Basically, it is there. Only we need to reread it and make a good application of or utility of it. Thank you.
Enrique, do you wanna go next?
Yes, just a short comment based on one of the questions posted on the chat by Ram Bashkar. Thank you, Ram, for this question. Whether the price of plastic or which price of recycled plastics basically the collection would be competitive and sort of the problem will solve itself. My point is it's very risky for us to look at the markets of residues, of secondary markets, only from the lens of an economist, only looking at supply, demand, and market price, because that prevents us from looking at the engineering view of things, which is to create infrastructure for markets that do not produce waste. For example, instead of having bottles all around, so we're having a lot of convenience, linear convenience that we have today, other people hundreds of years ago had fountains everywhere in cities, but those fountains could not be monetized. You didn't have to pay anything to drink from them. Couldn't we restore that model? Of course we can, and we can probably make better fountains in every block, shopping mall or house than we had 1,000 years ago with the models they had. But how to market that and how to create a financial instrument that will fund the deployment of this type of infrastructure that avoids the need for bottles, for example. It's possible. I mean, we have a tax collection system, we have governments, we can have public bonds that people would be keen to invest on, and it would avoid a lot of public expenditures in downstream collection of waste where recycled or plastic waste has a low price and end up being only having a negative cost to treat. So so yeah, the connection between financing for novel models of designing markets, not only counting on price and supply and demand and market price issues, because that's very that gives us a tunnel vision to the wrong side. I think it's very important. So let's think like engineers a bit more and a bit less like economists. And I am an economist, by the way. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Enrique. I hope that answers the question for Ram as well. Jocelyn, you also had your hand up that I missed. Would you like to add anything in any of the questions we had before, or is there a specific question you'd like to answer?
I just wanted to answer the question on supporting the informal sector in the repair industry in emerging countries. I think there is a project, Emerging Ghana, funded by the EU, try to address the sector by training electronic and electrical equipment repairer. And I think we really need more of these in many African countries because most of these workers are really exposed to health hazards. They are not even aware of how exposed they are. So we really need like many of these initiatives in order to support. We know we are on the receiving end in Africa, receiving most of these second-hand goods, and at times some of them are not even functional. So I think if there is like we can go beyond the extended producer responsibility, maybe to the ultimate producer responsibility. Some of these funds can help support these workers of the informal sectors in the repair industry in emerging countries. And I think globally, there should be strong debate around this and to see how the ultimate producer responsibility can be enforced.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And since we're like really tight on time and way overboard now, I think I would like to conclude the session here and would take this opportunity to thank all the panelists today for such an insightful discussion and precious insights. Thank you so much for being here today and once again being so accommodating with time. Thank you all. And I would just give the floor to Arpit now for some concluding remarks.
Thank you, Purva. And I'd also like to say thank you to everybody for being so accommodating and being there today, especially for the panelists who have joined us at 6 a.m. in the morning and have joined us at 11 p.m. at night. Also want to thank Chatham House for collaborating with us on this event and jointly organizing it. And we would be working on a way forward document and along with Chatham House, and we'll share it with you all so that we have some conclusive next steps. And over to you, Patrick, for the concluding remarks. Thank you.
Yes, the same actually. I'd like to thank you all the speakers and panelists and all the participants for joining today. There's really valuable information exchange and sharing. And I think one of the key takeaways for me is, again, is the need to learn together and to move together towards circularity, because no country is circular at the moment. No country can become circular on its own. And especially in times of increasing geopolitical tensions, there's really a role for this international cooperation, and governments can use the circular economy to work together in a cooperative way. There's also an important role for multilateral organizations to facilitate that. And all these efforts should be strengthened. So yeah, again, thank you. And I hope to see many of you also in person when the summit in Kigali will take place in December, end of this year. Hopefully we can see each other then and exchange more. Thank you.